Book talk begins at 5 minutes and 23 seconds.
Welcome to CraftLit, the podcast for crafters who love books. My name is Heather Ordover, and I'm podcasting from where the Delaware River meets the Old York Road, New Hope, Pennsylvania.
Episode 642. Tie that chi into a merry little bow. This episode of CraftLit is brought to you by our spectacular supporters at Patreon. This week we wanted to highlight BJ, Rosa Caffey, Alix, Cynthia, Cindy Weber, and a new patron, Leanne. Thank you so much. We couldn't do this without you. I just have a couple of things because I have to record all of the next 3 episodes today if we're going to get the 12 days of CraftLit done in time for Christmas. I'm traveling on the 20th. Eric has a life. I'm trying to record all of the audio and actually some video. So if you listen to the 12 days of CraftLit on YouTube, you will see me. You can still hear me on the audio version, but you can see me over on YouTube, and I believe it's youtube.com/craftlit-channel. You can get to everything from our link tree, linktr.ee/craftlit-channel, all one word. All the links to all of our stuff is there. So why the tie that chi? Because I finally found a decent Tai Chi teacher, somebody who actually knows what they're talking about and doesn't treat it like it's jazzercise. It's hard to find around here. I don't know why. And I have to drive half an hour to go see him. But the first class wiped me out, but it did it in a really good way. And it definitely feels like the moving meditation that I need to lower my heart rate, because long COVID is messing with that. And yeah, get some exercise again, but exercise that is very slow and thoughtful, which is also important with the long COVID thing. So I am a merry little bow of happiness with chi wrapped all around. And the other reason I wanted to bring up chi is because of a Radiolab episode that my sister shared with me. This is going to be linked to in the show notes for you. It's called The Interstitium, and I'm going to have to listen to it like 6 more times to get it all really locked into my brain. But the discovery, which is new to me, I am sure there are plenty of people in the scientific world and the medical research world who know about this particular discovery, but it's kind of like the anatomical version of figuring out that light is both a wave and a particle. Kind of a big deal. So really, seriously, go listen to it. It's not that long, and you probably could listen to it on 1 1/4 speed and still understand what's going on, although their editing is very fast, which is often fun, but sometimes hard to follow. The last thing before we get into our book talk, don't forget, send video, audio or video, but video off your phone, super easy, whenever you finish a book. Just a regular book, not a classic fiction book necessarily. Make a book commercial so that everybody else can benefit from what you thought was good or what you thought was something not to waste your time on. And Eric will edit those into little book commercial compilations that we can put up on YouTube and on Facebook so that everybody gets to find out about really cool books that you know you're going to agree on the quality of, because CraftLit people, you just are that cool. So don't forget to send that. You can email Eric, ERIK, at craftlit.com. You can send it to heather@craftlit.com. You can send it through Facebook. You can probably find many, many ways to send it, including if you're using the CraftLit app, I believe there is a contact option in the left side menu, the hamburger menu, and that should be able to get you to a mail option as well. All right, let's get into our 2 chapters for today, chapters 52 and 53. So the first word that came up made me laugh because it's Aegis, Aegis, the umbrella of protection that goes back to Greek mythology. And I use this as my Wordle word because it has at least 3 vowels in it and an S, and S's are pretty common. So starting with Aegis has been a lucky word for me. I was very excited. But that's all it's being, it's not referring to Wordle in Dumas' book. It is referring to that shield of protection. And Milady uses it to describe the mask that she wears to protect herself. And that D'Artagnan lifted that mask up, broke through her shield of protection. And that's part of why she's so ticked off at him. You're going to hear Dumas make a little bit of a whoopsie mistake. He's going to mention Botany Bay. Botany Bay was a penal colony in Australia that didn't start until well after this story takes place. So, yeah, it was current at the time. It sounds really cool the way he's using it. And he's probably focused on that, at least in part because by this point in the story, he was concurrently working on The Count of Monte Cristo. And you're going to hear other things over the next 3 episodes that will kind of give you Count of Monte Cristo, Chateau d'If vibes, and you're not dreaming. It's there. It's been noted before. So, yeah, so you can look for that. The other thing, we're going to get into some pretty intricate machinations that deal with the split between Catholics and Protestants, Puritans in particular, or Dumas is using the phrase Puritan, the name Puritan to, well, honestly, to give us the vibes that we're going to get from talking about somebody being a Puritan. Pretty strict, pretty straightforward, pretty unbending. To the Catholics, that would be heresy. And if you're interested in more about this, this is going to sound unconventional, but I really recommend listening to Wolf Hall. For one thing, as I've said before on this podcast, the reader is just stupendous. But also, I thought the story of Thomas Cromwell, not Oliver Cromwell, Thomas Cromwell, was fascinating in part because you really got to see what the world was like, or at least a fictionalized version of what the world was like during that tumultuous time as Henry was in the process of dissolving the Catholic Church in Britain and eventually creating the Church of England. So, yeah, it's a fascinating period of time, and Wolf Hall is a great version. Just don't look at how long it is. Don't let it intimidate you. You're going to hear St. Bartholomew's Day brought up again. You're also going to hear Judith brought up quite a bit over the next, at least these 2 chapters, and I think one more time next week. Apostasy, like an apostate, is somebody who has formally renounced a religious position. You're going to hear a reference to Madame Messalina and Lady Macbeth. Well, Lady Macbeth, I know you know, and as a consequence, you probably have a pretty good idea of what type of person Madame Messalina was. But Dumas is actually bringing her up because she hits even closer to the mark when we talk about Milady. Messalina was, and this is according to at least one source, the 3rd wife of Emperor Claudius. She was accused of and executed for quite a raft of crimes. I have no idea if any of them were true, but one of them was bigamy. And she was, as I mentioned, executed for all of this back then. This would have been bridging the BCE and the CE time span. The word pique, P-I-Q-U-E, sometimes people mispronounce it PK, sometimes people mispronounce it PK to be funny. But pique is being irritated, a fit of pique, a fit of irritation. And Dumas uses this word to insult Puritans. So just keep your ears open for it. It is definitely Dumas making a joke straight at us. There's also a reference to De Profundis. Now, De Profundis, for me, and for evidently most of the Google searches in the world, gets referred to as, oh, that letter that Oscar Wilde wrote from jail, which is true. But Oscar Wilde was educated, and De Profundis is actually referring to Psalm 130. This is the, I have cried unto thee, O Lord, from the depths, out of the depths of despair. The out from the depths is the English translation of the Latin phrase de profundis. So the Catholics would have been de profundising, while the Protestants would have been, I've cried out unto thee, O Lord, out from the depths of despair. And then the last thing is a reference to 3 Hebrew children in the furnace. This is a reference to Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, who got tossed into the flames by Nebuchadnezzar, and who he went and checked on them at one point and saw an angel or some heavenly creature there singing to them and consoling them. And so that's the reference that you're going to hear. They are not named by name, just as the 3 Hebrew children. So that's it. Let's listen to chapters 52 and 53 of The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. And if you're listening to a different version of the book from us, you can skip ahead to 48 minutes. All right, here we go.
Chapter 52 of the D'Artagnan Romances, Volume 1, The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas, translated by William Robson. Captivity. The First Day. Let us return to Milady, whom a glance thrown upon the coast of France has made us lose sight of for an instant. We shall find her still in the despairing attitude in which we left her, plunged in an abyss of dismal reflection, a dark hell at the gate of which she has almost left hope behind, because for the first time she doubts, for the first time she fears. On 2 occasions her fortune has failed her. On 2 occasions she has found herself discovered and betrayed, and on these 2 occasions it was to one fatal genius, sent doubtlessly by the Lord to combat her, that she was succumbed. D'Artagnan has conquered her, that invincible power of evil. He has deceived her in her love, humbled her in her pride, thwarted her in her ambition, and now he ruins her fortune, deprives her of liberty, and even threatens her life. Still more, he has lifted the corner of her mask, that shield with which she covered herself and which rendered her so strong. D'Artagnan has turned aside from Buckingham, whom she hates as she hates everyone she has loved, the tempest with which Richelieu threatened him in the person of the Queen. D'Artagnan had passed himself upon her as De Ward, for whom she had conceived one of those tiger-like fancies common to women of her character. D'Artagnan knows that terrible secret which she has sworn no one shall know without dying. In short, at the moment in which she has just obtained from Richelieu a carte blanche, by the means of which she is about to take vengeance on her enemy, this precious paper is torn from her hands, and it is D'Artagnan who holds her prisoner and is about to send her to some filthy Botany Bay, some infamous Tyburn of the Indian Ocean. All this she owes to D'Artagnan, without doubt. From whom can come so many disgraces heaped upon her head, if not from him? He alone could have transmitted to Lord de Winter all these frightful secrets which he has discovered, one after another, by a train of fatalities. He knows her brother-in-law. He must have written to him. What hatred she distills! Motionless with her burning and fixed glances in her solitary apartment, How well the outbursts of passion which at times escape from the depths of her chest with her respiration accompany the sound of the surf which rises, growls, roars, and breaks itself like an eternal and powerless despair against the rocks on which is built this dark and lofty castle. How many magnificent projects of vengeance she conceives by the light of the flashes which her tempestuous passion casts over her mind against Madame Bonacieux, against Buckingham, but above all against D'Artagnan. Projects lost in the distance of the future. Yes, but in order to avenge herself, she must be free. And to be free, a prisoner has to pierce a wall, detach bars, cut through a floor, all undertakings which a patient and strong man may accomplish, but before which the feverish irritations of a woman must give way. Besides, to do all this, time is necessary, months, years, and she has 10 or 12 days, as Lord de Winter, her fraternal and terrible jailer, has told her. And yet, if she were a man, she would attempt all this, and perhaps might succeed. Why, then, did heaven make the mistake of placing that manlike soul in that frail and delicate body? The first moments of her captivity were terrible. A few convulsions of rage which she could not suppress paid her debt of feminine weakness to nature. But by degrees she overcame the outbursts of her mad passion, and nervous tremblings which agitated her frame disappeared, and she remained folded within herself like a fatigued serpent in repose.
Go to! I must have been mad to allow myself to be carried away so,"
says she, gazing into the glass which reflects back to her eyes the burning glance by which she appears to interrogate herself.
"No violence. Violence is the proof of weakness. In the first place, I have never succeeded by that means. Perhaps if I employed my strength against women, I might perchance find them weaker than myself, and consequently conquer them, but it is with men that I struggle, and I am but a woman to them. Let me fight like a woman, then. My strength is in my weakness."
Then, as if to render an account to herself of the changes she could place upon her countenance, so mobile and so expressive, she made it take all expressions from that of passionate anger, which convulsed her features, to that of the most sweet, most affectionate, and most seducing smile. Then her hair assumed successively under her skillful hands all the undulations she thought might assist the charms of her face. At length she murmured, satisfied with herself,
"Come, nothing is lost. I am still beautiful."
It was then nearly 8 o'clock in the evening. Milady perceived a bed. She calculated that the repose of a few hours would not only refresh her head and her ideas, but still further her complexion. A better idea, however, came into her mind before going to bed. She had heard something said about supper. She had already been an hour in this apartment. They could not long delay bringing her a repast. The prisoner did not wish to lose time, and she resolved to make that very evening some attempts to ascertain the nature of the ground she had to work upon, by studying the characters of the men to whose guardianship she was committed. A light appeared under the door. This light announced the reappearance of her jailers. Milady, who had arisen, threw herself quickly into the armchair, her head thrown back, her beautiful hair unbound and disheveled, her bosom half bare beneath her crumpled lace, one hand on her heart, and the other hanging down. The bolts were drawn, the door groaned upon its hinges. Steps sounded in the chamber and drew near. "Place that table there," said a voice which the prisoner recognized as that of Felton. The order was executed. "You will bring lights and relieve the sentinel," continued Felton. And this double order, which the young lieutenant gave to the same individuals, proved to Milady that her servants were the same men as her guards, that is to say, soldiers. Felton's orders were, for the rest, executed with a silent rapidity that gave a good idea of the way in which he maintained discipline. At length, Felton, who had not yet looked at Milady, turned toward her. "Aha," said he, "she is asleep. That's well. When she wakes up, she can sup." And he made some steps toward the door. "But, my lieutenant," said a soldier less stoical than his chief, and who had approached Milady, "this woman is not asleep." "What? Not asleep?" said Felton. "What is she doing, then?" "She has fainted. Her face is very pale, and I have listened in vain. I do not hear her breathe." "You are right," said Felton, after having looked at Milady from the spot on which he stood without moving a step toward her. "Go and tell Lord de Winter that his prisoner has fainted. For this event, not having been foreseen, I don't know what to do." The soldier went out to obey the orders of his officer. Felton sat down upon an armchair, which happened to be near the door, and waited without speaking a word, without making a gesture. Milady possessed that great art, so much studied by women, of looking through her long eyelashes without appearing to open the lids. She perceived Felton, who sat with his back toward her. She continued to look at him for nearly 10 minutes, and in these 10 minutes the immovable guardian never turned round once. She then thought that Lord de Winter would come, and by his presence give fresh strength to her jailer. Her first trial was lost. She acted like a woman who reckons upon her resources. As a result, she raised her head, opened her eyes, and sighed deeply. At this sigh, Felton turned around. "Ah, you are awake, madame," said he. "Then I have nothing more to do here. If you want anything, you can ring."
"Oh, my God! My God! How I have suffered!"
said Milady in that harmonious voice which, like that of the ancient enchantresses, charmed all whom she wished to destroy. And she assumed, upon sitting up in the armchair, a still more graceful and abandoned position than when she reclined. Felton arose. "You will be served thus, madame, 3 times a day," said he. "In the morning at 9 o'clock, in the day at 1 o'clock, and in the evening at 8. If that does not suit you, you can point out what other hours you prefer, and in this respect your wishes will be complied with."
"But am I to remain always alone in this vast and dismal chamber?"
asked Milady. "A woman of the neighborhood has been sent for, who will be tomorrow at the castle, and will return as often as you desire her presence."
"I thank you, sir,"
replied the prisoner humbly. Felton made a slight bow and directed his steps toward the door. At the moment he was about to go out, Lord de Winter appeared in the corridor, followed by the soldier who had been sent to inform him of the swoon of Milady. He held a vial of salts in his hand. "Well, what is this? What is going on here?" said he in a jeering voice on seeing the prisoner sitting up and Felton about to go out. "Is the corpse come to life already? Felton, my lad, did you not perceive that you were taken for a novice, and that the first act was being performed of a comedy of which we shall doubtless have the pleasure of following out all the developments?" "I thought so, my lord," said Felton. "But as the prisoner is a woman, after all, I wish to pay her the attention that every man of gentle birth owes to a woman, if not on her account, at least on my own." Milady shuddered through her whole system. These words of Felton's passed like ice through her veins. "So," replied de Winter, laughing, "that beautiful hair so skillfully disheveled, that white skin, and that languishing look have not yet seduced you, you heart of stone?" "No, my lord," replied the impassive young man. "Your lordship may be assured that it requires more than the tricks and coquetry of a woman to corrupt me." "In that case, my brave lieutenant, let us leave Milady to find out something else and go to supper. But be easy, She has a fruitful imagination, and the second act of the comedy will not delay its steps after the first." At these words, Lord de Winter passed his arm through that of Felton and led him out laughing.
"Oh, I will be a match for you," murmured Milady between her teeth. "Be assured of that, you poor spoiled monk, you poor converted soldier who has cut his uniform out of a monk's frock."
"By the way," resumed de Winter, stopping at the threshold of the door, "you must not, Milady, let this check take away your appetite. Taste that fowl and those fish. On my honor, they are not poisoned. I have a very good cook, and he is not to be my heir. I have full and perfect confidence in him. Do as I do. Adieu, dear sister, till your next swoon." This was all that Milady could endure. Her hands clutched her armchair. She ground her teeth inwardly. Her eyes followed the motion of the door as it closed behind Lord de Winter and Felton, and the moment she was alone, a fresh fit of despair seized her. She cast her eyes upon the table, saw the glittering of a knife, rushed toward it and clutched it, but her disappointment was cruel. The blade was round and of flexible silver. A burst of laughter resounded from the other side of the ill-closed door, and the door reopened. "Ha, ha, ha!" cried Lord de Winter. "Ha, ha! Don't you see, my brave Felton? Don't you see what I told you? That knife was for you, my lad. She would have killed you. Observe, this is one of her peculiarities. To get rid thus, after one fashion or another, of all the people who bother her. If I had listened to you, the knife would have been pointed and of steel. Then no more, Felton. She would have cut your throat, and after that, everybody else's. See, John, see how well she knows how to handle a knife." In fact, Milady still held the harmless weapon in her clenched hand, but these last words, this supreme insult, relaxed her hands, her strength, and even her will. The knife fell to the ground. "You were right, my lord," said Felton with a tone of profound disgust, which sounded to the very bottom of the heart of Milady. "You were right, my lord, and I was wrong." And both again left the room. But this time Milady lent a more attentive ear than the first, and she heard their steps die away in the distance of the corridor.
"I am lost," murmured she. "I am lost. I am in the power of men upon whom I can have no more influence than upon statues of bronze or granite. They know me by heart, and are steeled against all my weapons. It is, however, impossible that this should end as they have decreed." In fact, as this last reflection indicated, this instinctive return to hope, sentiments of weakness or fear did not dwell long in her ardent spirit. Milady sat down to table, ate from several dishes, drank a little Spanish wine, and felt all her resolution return. Before she went to bed, she had pondered, analyzed, turned all sides, examined on all points the words, the steps, the gestures, the signs, and even the silence of her interlocutors. And of this profound, skillful, and anxious study, the result was that Felton, everything considered, appeared the more vulnerable of her two persecutors. One expression above all recurred to the mind of the prisoner. "If I had listened to you," Lord de Winter had said to Felton. Felton, then, had spoken in her favor, since Lord de Winter had not been willing to listen to him. "Weak or strong?" repeated Milady. "That man has then a spark of pity in his soul. Of that spark I will make a flame that shall devour him. As to the other, he knows me, he fears me, and knows what he has to expect of me if ever I escape from his hands. It is useless then to attempt anything with him. But Felton, that's another thing. He is a young, ingenious, pure man, who seems virtuous. Him there are means of destroying."
And Milady went to bed and fell asleep with a smile upon her lips. Anyone who had seen her sleeping might have said she was a young girl dreaming of the crown of flowers she was to wear on her brow at the next festival. End of chapter 52. Chapter 53 of the D'Artagnan Romances, Volume 1, The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas, translated by William Robson. Captivity, the second day. Milady dreamed that she at length had D'Artagnan in her power, that she was present at his execution, and it was the sight of his odious blood flowing beneath the axe of the headsman which spread that charming smile upon her lips. She slept as a prisoner sleeps, rocked by his first hope. In the morning, when they entered her chamber, she was still in bed. Felton remained in the corridor. He brought with him the woman of whom he had spoken the evening before and who had just arrived. This woman entered and, approaching Milady's bed, offered her services. Milady was habitually pale. Her complexion might therefore deceive a person who saw her for the first time.
"I am in fever," said she. "I have not slept a single instant during all this long night. I suffer horribly. Are you likely to be more humane to me than others were yesterday? All I ask is permission to remain abed."
"Would you like to have a physician called?" said the woman. Felton listened to this dialogue without speaking a word. Milady reflected that the more people she had around her, the more she would have to work upon, and Lord de Winter would redouble his watch. Besides, the physician might declare the ailment feigned, and Milady, after having lost the first trick, was not willing to lose the second.
"Go and fetch a physician," said she. "What could be the good of that? These gentlemen declared yesterday that my illness was a comedy. It would be just the same today, no doubt, for since yesterday evening they have had plenty of time to send for a doctor."
"Then," said Felton, who became impatient, "say yourself, madame, what treatment you wish followed."
How can I tell? My God, I know that I suffer, that's all. Give me anything you like, it is of little consequence."
"Go and fetch Lord de Winter," said Felton, tired of these eternal complaints.
"Oh, no, no,"
cried Milady.
"No, sir, do not call him, I conjure you. I am well, I want nothing, do not call him."
She gave so much vehemence, such magnetic eloquence to this exclamation that Felton, in spite of himself, advanced some steps into the room.
"He has come,"
thought Milady. "Meanwhile, madame, if you really suffer," said Felton, "a physician shall be sent for, and if you deceive us, well, it will be the worse for you. But at least we shall not have to reproach ourselves with anything." Milady made no reply, but turning her beautiful head round upon her pillow, she burst into tears and uttered heartbreaking sobs. Felton surveyed her for an instant with his usual impassiveness. Then, seeing that the crisis threatened to be prolonged, he went out. The woman followed him, and Lord de Winter did not appear.
"I fancy I begin to see my way,"
murmured Milady with a savage joy, burying herself under the clothes to conceal from anybody who might be watching her this burst of inward satisfaction. 2 hours passed away.
"Now it is time that the malady should be over," said she. "Let me rise and obtain some success this very day. I have but 10 days, and this evening 2 of them will be gone."
In the morning, when they entered Milady's chamber, they had brought her breakfast. Now, she thought, they could not long delay coming to clear the table, and that Felton would then reappear. Milady was not deceived. Felton reappeared, and without observing whether Milady had or had not touched her repast, made a sign that the table should be carried out of the room, it having been brought in ready spread. Felton remained behind. He held a book in his hand. Milady, reclining in an armchair near the chimney, beautiful, pale, and resigned, looked like a holy virgin awaiting martyrdom. Felton approached her and said, "Lord de Winter, who is a Catholic, like yourself, madame, thinking that the deprivation of the rites and ceremonies of your church might be painful to you, has consented that you should read every day the ordinary of your Mass, and here is the book which contains the ritual." At the manner in which Felton laid the book upon the little table near which Milady was sitting, at the tone in which he pronounced the two words, "your Mass," at the disdainful smile with which he then accompanied them, Milady raised her head and looked more attentively at the officer. By that plain arrangement of the hair, by that costume of extreme simplicity, by the brow polished like marble and as hard and impenetrable, she recognized one of those gloomy Puritans she had so often met, not only in the court of King James, but in that of the King of France, where in spite of the remembrance of the Saint Bartholomew, they sometimes came to seek refuge. She then had one of those sudden inspirations which only people of genius receive in great crises, in supreme moments which are to decide their fortunes or their lives. Those two words, "your Mass," and a simple glance cast upon Felton, revealed to her all the importance of the reply she was about to make, but with that rapidity of intelligence which was peculiar to her, this reply, ready arranged, presented itself to her lips.
"I,"
said she, with an accent of disdain in unison with that which she had remarked in the voice of the young officer,
"I, sir? My Mass? Lord de Winter, the corrupted Catholic, knows very well that I am not of his religion, and this is a snare he wishes to lay for me."
"And of what religion are you, then, madame?" asked Felton, with an astonishment which, in spite of the empire he held over himself, he could not entirely conceal.
"I will tell it," cried Milady with a feigned exultation, "on the day when I shall have suffered sufficiently for my faith."
The look of Felton revealed to Milady the full extent of the space she had opened for herself by this single word. The young officer, however, remained mute and motionless. His look alone had spoken.
"I am in the hands of my enemies," continued she with that tone of enthusiasm which she knew was familiar to the Puritans. "Well, let my God save me, or let me perish for my God. That is my reply I beg you to make to Lord de Winter. And as to this book," added she, pointing to the manual with her finger, but without touching it, as if she must be contaminated by it, "you may carry it back and make use of it yourself, for doubtless you are doubly the accomplice of Lord de Winter, the accomplice in his persecutions, the accomplice in his heresies."
Felton made no reply, took the book with the same appearance of repugnance which he had before manifested, and retired pensively. Lord de Winter came toward 5 o'clock in the evening. Milady had had time during the whole day to trace her plan of conduct. She received him like a woman who had already recovered all her advantages. "It appears," said the Baron, seating himself in the armchair opposite that occupied by Milady, and stretching out his legs carelessly upon the hearth, "it appears we have made a little apostasy."
"What do you mean, sir?"
"I mean to say that since we last met you have changed your religion. You have not by chance married a Protestant for a third husband, have you?"
"Explain yourself, my lord,"
replied the prisoner with majesty.
"For though I hear your words, I declare I do not understand them."
"Then you have no religion at all? I like that best," replied Lord de Winter, laughing.
"Certainly, that is most in accord with your own principles,"
replied Milady frigidly. "Oh, I confess it is all the same to me."
"Oh, you need not avow this religious indifference, my lord. Your debaucheries and crimes would vouch for it."
"What? You talk of debaucheries? Madame Messalina, Lady Macbeth, either I misunderstand you or you are very shameless."
"You only speak thus because you are overheard,"
coolly replied Milady.
"and you wish to interest your jailers and your hangmen against me."
"My jailers and my hangmen? Hey day, madam, you are taking a poetical tone, and the comedy of yesterday turns to the tragedy this evening. As to the rest, in 8 days you will be where you ought to be, and my task will be completed."
"Infamous task! Impious task!"
cried Milady with an exultation of a victim who provokes his judge. "My word," said De Winter, rising, "I think the hussy is going mad. Come, calm yourself, Madame Puritan, or I'll remove you to a dungeon. It's my Spanish wine that has gotten to your head, is it not? But never mind. That sort of intoxication is not dangerous, and will have no bad effects." And Lord de Winter retired swearing, which at that period was a very nightly habit. Felton was indeed behind the door, and had not lost one word of this scene. Milady had guessed aright.
"Yes, go, said she to her brother. "The effects are drawing near, on the contrary, but you weak fool will not see them until it is too late to shun them."
Silence was re-established. 2 hours passed away. Milady's supper was brought in, and she was found deeply engaged in saying her prayers aloud, prayers which she had learned of an old servant of her second husband, the most austere Puritan. She appeared to be in ecstasy, and did not pay the least attention to what was going on around her. Felton made a sign that she should not be disturbed, and when all was arranged, he went out quietly with the soldiers. Milady knew she might be watched, and so she continued her prayers to the end, and it appeared to her that the soldier who was on duty at her door did not march with the same step, and seemed to listen. For the moment she wished nothing better. She arose, came to the table, ate but little, and drank only water. An hour after, her table was cleared, but Milady remarked that this time Felton did not accompany the soldiers. He feared then to see her too often. She turned toward the wall to smile, for there was in this smile such an expression of triumph that this smile alone would have betrayed her. She allowed, therefore, half an hour to pass away, and as at that moment all was silence in the old castle, as nothing was heard but the eternal murmur of the waves, that immense breaking of the ocean, with her pure, harmonious, and powerful voice, she began the first couplet of the psalm, then in great favor with the Puritans.
"Thou leave thy servants, Lord, to see if they be strong, but soon thou dost afford thy hand to lead them on."
These verses were not excellent, very far from it. But, as it is well known, the Puritans did not pique themselves upon their poetry. While singing, Milady listened. The soldier on guard at her door stopped, as if he had been changed into stone. Milady was then able to judge of the effect she had produced. Then she continued her singing with inexpressible fervor and feeling. It appeared to her that the sounds spread to a distance beneath the vaulted roofs, and carried with them a magic charm to soften the hearts of her jailers. It, however, likewise appeared that the soldier on duty, a zealous Catholic no doubt, shook off the charm, for through the door he called, "Hold your tongue, madame! Your song is as dismal as a De Profundis, and if besides the pleasure of being in garrison here, we must hear such things as these, no mortal can hold out." "Silence!" then exclaimed another stern voice, which Milady recognized as that of Felton. "What are you meddling with, stupid? Did anybody order you to prevent that woman from singing? No, you were told to guard her, to fire at her if she attempted to fly. Guard her. If she flies, kill her, but don't exceed your orders." An expression of unspeakable joy lightened the countenance of Milady, But this expression was fleeting as the reflection of lightning. Without appearing to have heard the dialogue of which she had not lost a word, she began again, giving to her voice all the charm, all the power, all the seduction the demon had bestowed upon it.
For all my dears, my cares, my exile and my chains, I have my youth, my prayers, and God who counts my pains.
Her voice, of immense power and sublime expression, gave to the rude, unpolished poetry of these psalms a magic and an effect which the most exalted Puritans rarely found in the songs of their brethren, and which they were forced to ornament with all the resources of their imagination. Felton believed he heard the singing of the angel who consoled the 3 Hebrews in the furnace. Milady continued,
One day our doors will ope, with God come our desire, and if betrays that hope, to death we can aspire.
This verse, into which the terrible enchantress threw her whole soul, completed the trouble which had seized the heart of the young officer. He opened the door quickly, and Milady saw him appear, pale as usual, but with his eye inflamed and almost wild.
"Why do you sing thus, and with such a voice?"
said he.
"Your pardon, sir," said Milady with mildness. "I forgot that my songs are out of place in this castle. I have perhaps offended you in your creed, but it was without wishing to do so, I swear. Pardon me, then, a fault which is perhaps great, but which certainly was involuntary."
Milady was so beautiful at this moment. The religious ecstasy in which she appeared to be plunged gave such an expression to her countenance that Felton was so dazzled that he fancied he beheld the angel whom he had only just before heard.
Yes, yes," said he, "you disturb, you agitate the people who live in the castle."
The poor, senseless young man was not aware of the incoherence of his words, while Milady was reading with her lynx's eyes the very depths of his heart.
"I will be silent, then,"
said Milady, casting down her eyes with all the sweetness she could give to her voice, with all the resignation she could impress upon her manner.
"No, no, madame," said Felton. "Only do not sing so loud, particularly at night."
At these words, Felton, feeling that he could not long maintain his severity toward his prisoner, rushed out of the room.
"You have done right, Lieutenant," said the soldier. "Such songs disturb the mind, and yet we become accustomed to them. Her voice is so beautiful."
End of chapter 53.
I'm going to read you one of the 3 more modern translations of the very last part of this chapter. "You did the right thing, Lieutenant," said the soldier. "Those kind of songs upset the mind. But you know, a person could get used to them. Her voice is so beautiful." To me, this just rang like, okay, first off, foreshadowing, yes, but also siren songs, totally bringing on that vibe. Also, the whole idea of normalization, that the more often we hear something, even when we know it's wrong, the more used we get to hearing it and the less we question it. And that's dangerous. It's dangerous when it's Milady. It's dangerous just in general. Questioning and doubting is important. So that just jumped out at me. I also love De Winter. Every part of De Winter that we get for the next 3 weeks is just spectacular. It's like Dumas decided, I am just going to make De Winter fun. Just fun. He's kind of mustache twirling. I mean, he's really loving having Milady under his thumb. And wow, yes. And Milady, at the beginning of the first chapter today, I was like, oh, Dumas, why? Why did you have to do but I am weak, so I will fight like a woman. And then I thought, oh, no, Heather, you're misreading that. She is saying, if the guys are going to be so dumb as to only see me as something weak, then that's their weakness, and I'll use it as my strength. And wow, the next couple of weeks, you are just going to watch her rock that plan. Oh, and I almost forgot. I also loved when De Winter said, my cook is not my heir, therefore I trust him. I don't know. That just struck me as awesome. That's all. All right. Have a great one. Don't forget to send in book commercials for books you have finished, little video or audio clips. We love them. Bring them on. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Have a great one. Oh, and today is actually the second day of CraftLit. When this comes out, it will be the second day of CraftLit. So I hope you are enjoying. The first day was Jerome K. Jerome, author of 3 Men in a Boat, to say nothing of the dog. He wrote some Christmas ghost stories. So day 1 is the first half of that, and day 2, today, will be the second half. And then there will just be more and more and more all the way up until Christmas Day. So big thank you to Eric for the heavy lift on this, and have a great one. Talk to you soon. Bye.
A big thanks to all the CraftLit listeners who support the show by being a premium audio member via craftlit.com/premium or via patreon.com/craftlit. Your support for the show is what's kept us going since 2006. If you feel like getting free audio pretty much every week, please consider supporting the show by heading over to patreon.com/craftlit and pledging what you feel the show is worth to you. If you can't support the show that way, consider leaving a review at iTunes or at our facebook.com/craftlit page, or follow @craftlit on Twitter and share the show with your followers too. And remember, if your hands are too busy to pick up a book, at least you can turn one on.